Places to stay away from here in the United States if you value freedom.
I know too many people that would not leave their area because it's too comfortable.
I mean, just look a couple years down the road, it's not going to look good for you.
Yeah.
If you have to have two incomes to survive in this one particular area, maybe there's another place that you could find.
We've learned it from our mistake as well. We spent a little bit too much time focusing on the desirability of our climate.
We're fed up with how many properties we think like, oh, we're going to go through with this one because it seems like it's a great deal, it's in a great area. A lot of these states, you're going to be paying thousands of dollars.
Yeah, but not everybody knows that though. That's the big one that will limit you right away. And that also comes along with, if you generally have that, you're generally gonna have more restrictions on the other side of things too, whether it's homeschooling or whatever. They kind of go hand in hand.
One of the things that we've struggled with a lot.
Probably the most. There's some that have no zoning actually, and that's what we prefer. I'll call the county and they're like, we don't even have a zoning department.
It's not like what I always thought it was.
Yeah.
Well, most things in life are not like what I always thought it was.
If you can't afford where you're looking to be, then what's the point of going there if I have to be a slave just to be able to afford it?
Financial pressure really reduces practical freedom. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us today, guys. We have another great show for you guys. We're super excited about it. So yeah,
definitely. Today we want to talk about something that, well, as always, is very important to us. I think everything we talk about on this channel is pretty much really important to us.
Yeah.
But this one particular subject is something that we've been focusing on for many years now. And it's about basically places to stay away from here in the United States if you value freedom.
Yeah.
And that's been something we've been working on and towards
for a long time
now, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's been, I would definitely say years, if probably at least two to 4 years.
Yeah.
Something in that nature.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of been like this evolving thing because sometimes you think you know where you want to go and then you go there and then it's not really what you thought it was going to be, or things change, and you know, there's nowhere perfect, but there's definitely places here in the US that are more freedom-minded, better policies for those that value, you know, less laws, less policies, less zoning, less regulation.
All of it.
All of that.
And not only that too, a big thing is like the trap that we fell into multiple times, and we'll talk about that, we'll probably get into it, is the idea of like falling in love or sticking around to what you're used to as far as climate-wise.
Oh gosh, that's
it's
two-edged sword.
It's a big one. It's a big one, right? We all like certain weathers. Certain people are born and raised in the snow. You cannot get them out of it. Other people that are in the South, you cannot get them out of the sunshine, or at least in decently mild weather.
Yeah.
And so that becomes, you know, it's a challenge for many people when you're choosing a forever place to stay, right? A homestead or a place that you can have a little bit more freedom on your side. So those are the type of traps that you have to look for, and there's sacrifices to be made. So
there's a ton of sacrifices to be made. I think we've made so many. And then on that note, you know, in terms of weather and climate, that's been one of the things that we've struggled with a lot.
Probably the most.
Yeah, because we just have certain preferences, as do most people. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people have preferences. Yeah. And, you know, we try and stick within those realms, and sometimes you can do that, other times you can't. But
well, that's where it becomes more, you know, the classic saying, a desire versus a need, right? It's a desire, and those are the type of things that you want it, but is it really necessary? And we can get into it as far as, is it worth to get one of your desires if it doesn't meet a need, or the price point is not attainable,
or could put you at risk for something else.
Yeah, and given the subject matter that we're talking about today, that's exactly it. So
definitely,
absolutely, yeah, it's a big one. You can't fall in love with that. It's the idea of you try your best, but you've got a limited amount of states that you can work with. These states have certain rules. These states have certain rules. Pick your best and find your best way to achieve your goals and have the freedom and the likeliness of what you want to do on your particular land. So you have to deal with the cards you're dealt at the end of the day. So,
definitely. Yeah. And, you know, before we go further into it, I have a list of different things that we use to define freedom, what it means to us. And so I want to go through that because it's going to give context as to what we will be discussing and the lens we are looking at everything through for the duration of this show. So for us, freedom means the ability to own land and use it how you want, ability to grow food and raise animals, ability to collect rainwater / be off grid. That's important.
Yeah.
Low property tax burden, low regulation on home businesses. That one is, we usually don't have too much issues with that, but that's just kind of in there in terms of, a low regulatory environment. Respect for self-defense rights, very important. Not being crushed by permits, zoning, and codes. Yeah, having the zoning police always checking on you.
Yeah.
The ability to homeschool easily. Reasonable cost of living, so you're not forced into a constant hustle, this pressure of you can never seem to make enough money to live where you are.
I was going to emphasize that, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll go deeper into that.
And then the last one, low surveillance / fewer restrictions on everyday life.
Yep.
So, and that kind of ties everything else in there.
Yeah.
But this is what we value. It's not the only thing, they're not the only things, but this is a lot of what we do focus on, and then we look at a lot more other things as well when you start to look at land and everything. But
so basically I'd like to condense that down. That's quite a bit. That's a mouthful. It's a summary for me, and I guess for us, where we stand on certain things that we could condense it. I would say more or less there's several main things. I would probably condense it down to land use, restrictions / zoning, or I should say, land use, permits, and then AKA zoning and restrictions, basically. And so those are the main things, because everything else after that, those are secondary, I feel. They're definitely important, like homeschooling. I don't know if you mentioned that one.
Yeah, homeschooling's on there.
Second Amendment rights, of course, right to self-defense. All those things come into play. But I think it all starts with, if you don't have the freedom to be able to do what you want to do on your own land, meaning if you're in the suburbs and you want 5 chickens in your backyard and the county does not allow you to be able to do so, or they have high restrictions on that area, that's going to restrict your freedom to be able to have fresh eggs in the morning, right? Or whatever it is that you're intending to do. And it's a simple thing. You would think that 2 or 3 or 4 chickens, if you have like a half an acre or an acre, would be not a big deal. But there are certain counties that are super strict on that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I think land use it would be kind of like number one, because that's where you find a lot of your freedom. And along with that, like a subcategory to that, I would say, is those permits, those restrictions, what you can do on that land,
regulations,
that land, and the zoning.
Yeah.
Ideally, I mean, there's all types of zoning. There's recreational, there's agricultural. Those are kind of like there's some that have no zoning, actually, and that's what we prefer. I'll call the county and they're like, we don't even have a zoning department there. There is zero regulation whatsoever. And unless you're within the city limits, there's no zoning. So that's super ideal. But
well, those are some of our favorites. And then people will say, oh, well, that's not that great, because then, your neighbor next to you can just do XYZ and there's no zoning.
But that's usually true freedom, though.
It is true freedom. It is true freedom, but it also doesn't usually happen. I mean, those things that people are saying, like, oh, your neighbor can do that. A lot of times,
they're exaggerated.
Most of the time, people are just out there trying to mind their own business,
do their thing,
and raise chickens and just do stuff without having the county down their back all the time.
And they may have, everybody's got a different lifestyle, right? We've seen multiple times that people may have, if they want a pink house, let them have a pink house. It doesn't really, one could argue, oh, it affects your comps and affects the value of your home. And listen, when you're out in the country, I much value more freedom. I value a lot more freedom than I value of what does my neighbor's house really look like.
Yeah, and then what we always do too is we drive around the areas, and if we see that collectively this place really just looks like everybody's just kind of doing whatever they want to do, and it looks kind of chaotic and maybe not the best environment for us to move our family to, well, then we're going to skip.
Yeah.
But, you know,
everybody's got different values and what they're looking for.
There's different places for different people. And it's just finding the area that you feel like, hey, I think I can fit in here and this is where I want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's talk about places with extreme zoning and land use control. Because, okay, the United States is very big.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's, you know, the red states and the blue states and all this stuff. But generally, there are states that are very just not freedom-minded.
Yeah.
You know, they really don't want you to do a lot of things.
Anything. They want their hand in everything. So.
They do. Yeah. And some of these states here are California, and California is huge on all things regulatory. I mean, you can't even put, you know, upgrade your laundry room without probably pulling a permit in California. It's so exaggerated. It's really exaggerated. And I love California. I'm from California originally, so I do love the weather there, but
yeah, we've spoken to a lot of counties, and it's back in the day, and it's this crazy amount of thing. Like, you know, there's one time that we're looking for 5 acres, and you were only allowed 2 property or 2 building infrastructures on that 5 acres. And, you know, to a normal person, it might be like, oh, okay, it's 2.5 acres each building. That sounds not too bad. But in my mind, and there's others that get way worse than that. If I have to pull a permit just to be able to put a shed in my backyard or put a certain fence or a certain size.
It just becomes extreme.
It gets way too extreme, way too restrictive, way too much red tape, and therefore a lack of freedom, right, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And some of the other states on this list, and this is not, of course, all the states with high regulation, but of course we have New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Washington State, Hawaii, and there's a lot more. Now, here's the thing though, with all of these states, it doesn't mean that you can't go and have a more relaxed lifestyle in terms of, you know, being able to do what you want to do. But generally the culture of the state, you're going to run into a lot more of these hurdles.
Yeah. A lot of it, and it's dictated a lot by the big cities, like, of course, New York City, Manhattan, all these areas dictate kind of a little bit more what the entire state can or cannot do.
Yeah.
You know, San Francisco and Sacramento and Los Angeles, all these big cities kind of dictate a little bit more. Boston and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
All these kind of big cities dictate a little bit more what the state looks like, and therefore the culture. They're the ones that, the more concrete, the more policy that goes with the infrastructure, right? So the more buildings and highways and all the infrastructure that a place has, obviously there's going to be a lot more red tape. And that kind of trickles down into the countryside a little bit as well. So not necessarily all, but depending on the state and depending on the size. Like, for example, Texas is a good one. Texas has Dallas, Austin, Houston. But there's many counties in Texas that are completely free.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a second. One of the main reasons that not the main reason, but one of the few reasons, given your point that you were saying earlier, one of the reasons that we left is just high property taxes, for example. So you do have tons of freedom.
That we left Texas.
Yes. We had complete freedom to do what we were doing on our land. But like, for example, they have one of the highest tax rates in the country, along with New Jersey and I think Hawaii and a few others. But so if you can slash your property taxes in half by just moving across the state line, that's something to consider, right? So along with other things, we wanted more greenery. There was more trees.
I was
there was
going to say
a lot more.
Yeah, there's
but I'm just saying
variables that went into that.
Right. And then giving back to your point, Texas is so big, obviously, you can't compare that to Delaware, but nonetheless have massive cities, and it doesn't neglect the fact that 5-6 counties away, you can do whatever you want on your land. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not apples for apples, but it's a general rule of thumb.
It doesn't mean that if you are in any of these type of states, a blue state or a state with a lot of regulation, that you can't,
generally speaking,
can't live off grid or you can't do these things. It doesn't mean you can't do that, but you will usually have more limitations on certain rights, certain freedoms, depending on where you are, especially the closer you are to the bigger cities.
Oh, absolutely.
You're really going to see restrictions. I mean, zoning can even make multi-generational living just impossible because they don't allow for you to have like you were saying, the multiple structures and things like that on your land. So you can own land, but it's like you can't really control it.
Yeah.
So it's like I have this land, but you're still telling me what I can and what I can't do in my backyard.
Right.
And again, all within, not doing anything illegal, just generally speaking, having a chicken or two or 5. Right.
And I do understand a lot of counties will do an environmental thing. They'll do like, you'll need a permit for your septic. That's pretty feasible. That
that's reasonable.
Nobody wants to be on the river in their backyard and some solids come floating down the river, right? Like I get that. Yeah. But everything else besides that starts to kind of get, and I know that sounds very, freedom-minded or whatever, but that is the reality is I don't want anybody necessarily breathing down our necks to be able to put a secondary barn, a secondary shop, an additional dwelling.
Well, whatever
type of livestock I want on the land.
Yeah.
It's, if I want to be off-grid, on-grid, whatever type of, another one is, a lot of times this is just, it's a small settle one, but you have to be aware. A lot of places require a minimum square footage of your building, right? Which is very common. This is not unknown knowledge, but just to be aware for those who don't know, there's many places, again, in California, that was one of them. There was minimum, no more than 2 buildings on that property on the 5 acres, but also a minimum of each. I think it was 1,200 square feet, if I remember. But so then if you want to build something a little bit more modest and your budget only fits and you talk to a contractor or you decide to build it yourself and you want to put 1,000 square feet, then, you're limited. And then you're like, well, I need to make sure it's at least 1,200 plus or else the county will come and be barking down my neck. And it's a whole scrutiny of things. So
it is.
Yeah.
And we actually were under contract very recently for a parcel of land that we actually pulled out of because you could put, it was a vacant piece of land, and you could put 1 dwelling and 1 structure, but anything else after that, forevermore, you need to have permits, approvals, and the county needs to come out and like check mark off every time you do like that next step in the development of whatever structure that is or building. And it was just so like, man, so we always would have to do that, and we just don't like to have so many kinds of like limitations and always having to go get permission every 2 seconds.
It doesn't,
because that's important to us.
That doesn't equal freedom.
Yeah. So
it's just, I don't know what else to say. That just doesn't, to me, that doesn't have in my mindset freedom if you're going to have somebody coming down and telling you what you can or cannot do at any given point in time. It just limits yourself. So
it's like I'm not 10 still living at my parents.
Right.
So.
I was just going to say and I was going to say which of the 100 properties that we were under contract for, but I know which one you're talking about. So
it was recent.
Yeah.
And 100 properties being under contract. We're just basically we're fed up with how many properties we think like, oh, we're going to go through with this one because it seems like it's a great deal, it's in a great area. And then during the due diligence period, we're like, oh, wait, no, this one's not a good fit because whatever. But moving on, something else I think is very important, or we think is very important for people to keep into consideration too, is to stay away from places with high property taxes, like very, very high property taxes, because it's almost like you're going to have to keep paying so much money every year for this property, and certain states really jump up the property taxes to the point that it doesn't even make sense anymore how much you're paying. And so the highest property tax state in the nation, I knew this and then I forgot, and then I have it here in my notes. It's New Jersey. I find it odd that it's New Jersey out of all places, but okay.
Yes, I remember it being something like that in the Northeast.
And then Illinois, Texas. Okay, I think everybody knows that Texas is a huge stickler with property taxes.
Yeah, but not everybody knows that though. The people will focus a lot that it's a big state, it's gun friendly, it's this, it's conservative, it has a lot of freedom, but there's a catch. I don't want to say there's only one catch, I'm just saying that's something, if you're choosing to go to Texas, be aware that your cost of living is going to go up because of your taxes.
And again, not every county, because where we were in Texas, that county had low property taxes. So there are low property
low
tax.
for the state.
Yes, low for the state. So there are, good point.
Yeah.
There are areas where it is reasonable, but you have to be really mindful because most of the time people want to be by the big cities in Texas. They don't want to be just in the rural middle of nowhere, small Texas towns. And so you have to pay the price tag with that. And then, of course, New York, Connecticut.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of these states, you're going to be paying thousands of dollars in property taxes.
Yeah. Well, let me clarify too, going back to the original point. The basis of freedom comes, like, one of my, I guess, criteria would be your overall cost of living. You want to be able to, or we, you want to be able to afford where you're going to end up, where you're looking at, right? Mm-hmm. And your property taxes is part of that. So if you're going somewhere that you don't know if you can afford it, or it's going to be a struggle, or you're going to have to go really constantly fight, work crazy amount of overtime at your job, or wish and hope for that promotion, or create 5 side hustles just to make it because, for example, you want the climate. A lot of places that the climate is ideal, you may not be able to afford it or not get kind of what you want. So I think it all, like, the preface of, like, freedom starts with the cost of, like, it doesn't start necessarily with that, but it plays a huge role to be able to say,
it does.
If you can't afford where you're looking to be, then what's the point of going there if I have to be a slave just to be able to afford it, right? So property taxes is a big one. That's why I'm saying, like, a lot of people are attracted to Texas, and I don't know why we're honing in on Texas so much. We love Texas, but
nonetheless, we absolutely love Texas.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there. We love Texas, but nonetheless, that's a great example that there's tons of freedom, decent climate. There's a lot of good things going for it, but property taxes are high. So depending on where you are, and they continue to creep up, if that's something that you're wanting to, if you can swallow that pill, then that's fine.
Right.
But the overall part, I want to go back to the subject of freedom. We're talking about freedom here, where you can be the freest in whichever location, but your cost of living has to be included in that, because you're not truly free if you're always bottlenecked and trying to survive where you're at. So your cost of living, so your affordability, you want to pick a place that's affordable, given to your budget. Everybody has different needs. And along with that, of course, affordability plays into cost of living, property taxes, all that good stuff. So the taxes are critical, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
They're critical because somebody could be saying, hey, I want to be debt free on my house. But if your property tax bill is $500 to $600, $700, $800 a month, plus, I'm just giving an example, depending where you're coming from, that might be somebody else's mortgage, or close to, like 80%, 75% of somebody else's mortgage in another state.
Yeah.
So you don't have a payment on your house, but your property taxes keep going up. So therefore, that's a burden that's accumulating.
And it's a big variable, So we have people that are on fixed incomes.
Yes.
What do they do with that if you already have high property taxes and then they only keep going up?
Yeah.
I mean, just look a couple years down the road, it's not going to look good for you.
Yeah.
And then also, a lot of people that are freedom-minded, they want to homestead. A lot of times if you're homesteading, you're not necessarily, making millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And high property taxes are going to eat into your savings.
Yeah.
And then again, like what you were saying, it can force you to stay in the workforce longer than maybe you'd want, or in a position that you don't want because the property taxes. And, some people may say that the property taxes aren't that expensive, but for some people it really is. And some of these states and areas, it's astronomical.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
we know some people if you want to use the example, it's not the same thing, but you think about an HOA. If you live in an HOA and that HOA keeps going up, you could be completely like, hey, I'm ready to pay off my house, or my house is paid off, or whatever, but that's still a burden because you're like, oh my goodness, this payment is never
it's like
fee payment.
Right, it's like a never-ending mortgage. Right. But with property taxes, I know places in Florida that people are paying $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a year in property taxes. Property taxes.
In Florida? Okay.
Florida.
Well, I mean, depending on the size of the house, but yeah.
Not even that huge of a house.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I personally know. So, it's just crazy. So really good point there. If it's a bigger deal, right? It's what it symbolizes. If you have to pay so much into property taxes.
Yeah, it's a massive deal. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And then next, places that are hostile to off-grid / self-sufficient living. So there are some places that we really like in terms of climate. Okay, and it's funny, we've always made this joke, like, why are the places with the best climate, to us, the places we really like,
Yeah.
how come, they all have, just these horrible rules? Okay, so for example, Colorado, okay, when they tell you that you can't collect rainwater, you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
California,
Yeah.
Oregon is not as bad, but it has a lot of regulation too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Washington, Arizona. There are some good counties out there. We do know of a few good counties, but there are other counties that are surprisingly strict.
Yeah.
It's not just a free-for-all state. Arizona has some really good freedoms there, with other things, especially like self-defense.
Well, a lot of times too, I'll touch on this too real quick, is on the West Coast, something that you're always going to encounter, for the most part, they've got a lot of water rights.
Yes.
It's a situation, it goes way back when, I don't even know what started. It's because of the fact of the limited water that they do receive within Colorado, New Mexico, Utah. They all have this water rights that you can't, I was talking to somebody in Colorado not long ago that was building on his land, and we were talking about it, and he was saying, he elaborated the fact that you can't put a pond, you can't collect water. You're not technically supposed to collect rainwater, but he didn't really care. I think he was going to do it anyway, maybe in a small amount. I don't really know, but he emphasized a lot, and he might be able to get away with that, but he will not be able to get away with the fact of collecting a pond, because you're stopping the flow of water to get to its next destination. You're stopping that limited water. So it's stuff like that, right? It's like, because of their water rights, the restrictions of that on the West Coast. I'm not saying it's every state. I don't know them by heart, but it's a lot. The minute you go west, it gets more and more and more restrictive, and the water is like gold over there.
It really is.
It's a problem. It's a problem.
It is.
You wouldn't want to be restricted on, if you want to create a pond, you want to have a stock pond, you want to fish, you want to put, anything like that on your land.
Especially when you're living in those areas, because that's where water is even more,
absolutely,
necessary.
Yeah.
But and then Nevada, obviously too. There's water rights issues there. Yeah. Okay, so moving on next to places with heavy regulation on self-defense and tools. So we all know that there are a lot of states that are a lot more regulatory when it, comes to guns and things like that, your Second Amendment rights. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely important. I mean, a lot of people would emphasize the fact of self-defense itself. I mean, a lot of people, especially men, hunker down on that a lot, like, to protect yours and your family and whatnot, and rightfully so. But I also say too, when you're living on the land as a homesteader, a prepper, whatever, it's also very useful to be able to use firearms on the land, right? You don't want to be restricted as to what size magazine you can have, what type of pistol or rifle, or et cetera, because whether it's a .22, whether it's a rifle, a shotgun, whatever the case is, it's always useful to have on the land to protect yourself against predators, et cetera. So don't neglect the fact that if you're going to go live in the country, especially in the woods, that there's a really good use for that besides just protecting yourself against, I guess, other people,
right?
The populace or whatever the case is.
Yeah, but it's multiple reasons why it's important.
When you're in the country, there's a necessity for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of critical to be honest with you. So if I'm going to go live on the land, I would not want to be somewhere that I'm super restricted to the point that I can't even use it to say, hey, I need to hunt some animals, or I want to be able to, get some deer to be able to feed my family. Well, I guess you can't, because you can't use or whichever the case may be. But yeah, you don't want to be restricted. At the end of the day, you don't want to be restricted.
Yeah, we're not in favor of that. We're really big on being in places that, they have the stand your ground states, places that don't have complex permit systems or issues with storage and transport. Laws like that. So things get very particular depending on where you are in the country. So really be mindful of certain states if you are looking to be somewhere that is more freedom focused, because self-defense and tools that a lot of people would like to have, it becomes a problem in a lot of these states. Yeah.
And I can't say that we never crossed somewhere that wasn't probably legal, what we probably had in the truck. But nonetheless.
Driving through.
Yeah. We never did that.
Sure. No, we have not. And then places with high surveillance and an enforcement culture. Okay. So generally speaking, the bigger the city, the more surveillance you're going to have. There's going to be a lot more enforcement that's going on. So obviously major metros, you're going to want to stay away from this, like San Francisco, New York City, Seattle, things like that. Places that are really heavy on HOAs because they're really going to, like the HOA suburbs, because they're really going to restrict what you can and can't do. There's going to be a lot of enforcement. The enforcement culture is strong.
Well, the closer you are to infrastructure in general, the more concrete you have around you, the higher the policies, the red tape, the restrictions on what you can or cannot do. So just think of it that way. It doesn't take a rocket science to think like Atlanta is going to have more restrictions than a place in a small town of 30,000 people, say in Missouri, right? They go hand in hand together. The more concrete there is around, the more concrete, they call it concrete jungle, the more you have infrastructure, the more
there's
it goes hand in hand.
More cameras, more surveillance, more tickets, more, again, HOA rules, more problems.
Less freedom you have in general. Honestly. In all, whether it's what you can do on your land to how you can get your groceries at the grocery store, I don't know, or how they get, how they look at how you would get a speed ticket, whatever the case is with, like you're saying, cameras or whatever the case is. So just general freedom.
Yeah, definitely. I remember in California, they'll send people tickets in the mail. They have cameras. And Florida's doing that now, too, even more so. And I mean, it's kind of just getting to be everywhere. But there are some places that are going to be more heavy with these types of enforcement than other places. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more, generally speaking, on, I would say, the Democratic type of states. Not that, getting into politics or whatever, but I would definitely say that they're a lot more restrictive when it comes to that type of thing.
And also just big cities.
Yes.
Because you're Dallas, you're San Antonio, and even in states that are not considered Democratic.
Right. But within those city limits, there are a lot more restrictions, even though
major
it's a conservative
metros.
state. Yes.
Yes, always. Okay, and then the next one that we want to get into will be places where the cost of living forces like a hustle slavery. So places that you basically feel like you can't ever get ahead. This kind of goes back to like the property taxes, what you were saying.
At the beginning,
Yes.
Yeah. So it's exactly that. I mean, I don't even know if we need to address the point again, but that's the statement goes for itself. It says it for itself. It's really just the idea of if you can't afford where you're going, because a lot of people, let me touch on the climate thing real quick, because we touch a lot of that, and I think it's a big one. It was a big one for us, and it probably is a big one for a lot of people. If you value the climate and you're not willing to make the sacrifice, like where we are, this is not the ideal climate necessarily for us. Not what we would prefer. Is it still phenomenal? Absolutely. It scores very high, but it doesn't score the highest. That said, that's a sacrifice that we're willing to make because of all the other wide range of benefits that this general location offers us. So that being said, I think a lot of people put too much emphasis on like the climate. Like, for example, I've heard it say like, don't go into grow zone, 5 or 4, like up north, because you can't grow anything there. The growing seasons are shorter. I would argue if going up north means I can get more of what I'm looking for to achieve, whether it's freedom, like restrictions, or more affordability, going back to your point. So meaning if I can only afford where I am in beautiful sunny California or a very expensive place outside of Texas or Dallas or whatever the case is, if I can only afford 3 acres, but up north I can afford 20, well, I'm probably going to go up north. Now, to each his own, you may do fine on 3 acres, that's fine. I'm just saying, if you can go up north, there's ways to mitigate that. People don't often overthink like, I need to be in a specific climate, I can do nothing about it. Well, there's things that you can do about your growing season. You can put a greenhouse, and then in a zone 5 or 4, you can still grow, I don't know if you could say year round, but you can grow actually you can set it up to grow year round. So that being said, there's ways to mitigate those things, and then therefore, the person that grew up in Texas may end up in Vermont, or Maine, or North Dakota, whatever the case is, or Nebraska, if it's a lot more affordable. And they choose to go there, they may have family, whatever the case is. But for them, you're making the sacrifice that maybe you're adjusted to a certain climate or weather, but I think the point I'm trying to make is that I think people emphasize, and we've learned it from our mistake as well, we spent a little bit too much time focusing on the desirability of our climate that we really truly wanted, but then we're overseeing a lot of the other benefits around in other places. So sometimes you need to make a sacrifice saying, well, what am I going to grow up there? Don't necessarily listen to anything like that can be mitigated.
Yeah, think about the cost of living in these different areas. Correct. Because it's huge.
That takes precedence way over, in my opinion, than what can I grow or cannot grow. That I can fix over time with enough infrastructure or costs that I can throw at that problem. If it's setting up a greenhouse or whatever. But if my house or my land is 5 times the price where I am, then that is harder, right? It's going to be overall a more cost to stay where I am.
And just the general cost of living, all of the different factors that go into it. There are a lot of states that are way cheaper to live in than these other states. So it's the cost of living as a whole,
Land
if
prices,
you have to have,
taxes, everything.
If you have to have 2 incomes to survive in this one particular area, maybe there's another place that you could find that doesn't require that. So financial pressure really reduces practical freedom. And that's something that I think people should keep in mind, because we've had to do that, and it's just a very important thing to
it takes remember. A lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to be able to jump ship, to go somewhere that you don't know the culture, or you potentially have never been before.
And sometimes you don't have to go that far.
No,
it's just,
no. Right. But I'm just saying, a lot of times people, I know too many people that would not leave their area because it's too comfortable, regardless of how strangled they are. They just... It's
because they like the weather so much, or
but I think it's a comfortability factor as well. Just that goes along with the weather. They're that's what they're used to, but they're not willing to say, hey, but on the other side of the pond over there might be something else, So anyway, just food for thought. But
and then one more thing that's important for a lot of people, it's important for us, places where homeschooling and just homeschooling, we'll just leave it at that. Places where homeschooling is harder to do. Okay, so again, that's another thing. There's going to be states that will be a lot more restrictive with homeschooling policies, the scrutiny, oversight and approvals, reporting requirements. There's a lot that goes into this. So if you are interested in homeschooling, which most people, again, that want to have just more sovereignty over everything that they're doing. They want to be able to homeschool their kids. And you want to be in a place that is for that.
And that there's not much oversight as to how you teach your kids or what curriculum that, they're going to be able to learn from. I mean, we know families that have, just tremendous children that are so bright and so brilliant and so just incredible. At the age of 15, they're like diesel mechanics and just these type of
very
things.
Social, very kind,
but
well behaved. They're all homeschooled.
They're well-rounded. They're very well-rounded.
Very much so. Because I used to have this stigma when I was growing up, and I think a lot of people too, that if you homeschool your kids, they're going to come out antisocial or they're going to be missing out, but it's not the case from what we've been seeing. So, and you always want to have a balance, but for the most part, yes, it's not necessarily the case whatsoever. It all depends on the overall lifestyle for the children, and everything that's going on in terms of the homeschool environment. You can have co-ops, you can have them in different leagues, and just there's all kinds of stuff. And it's just not, it's not like what I always thought it was. Well, most things in life are not like what I always thought it was.
We could write a book on that one.
So what would you have to say, summarizing up, where to not go if you value freedom?
I would say, generally speaking, obviously, places that have, the main thing for me, again, going back to the original thing that I was saying earlier at the beginning, is land uses. So anywhere that has a lot of heavy restrictions on what you can or cannot do on your land, that it kind of starts there, because if you can't really control what you do on an everyday basis on your land, then you're very, very limited to me, that just doesn't equal freedom. So a lot of permitting, zone use, that type of thing. Of course, it depends to each individual, right? To each have their different circumstances between families or whatnot. If you're big on Second Amendment, which I'd argue that you should be, or I would encourage it, that comes into play as well. Other people, not so much about that, and maybe more homeschooling or vice versa. So everybody, and depending on how many kids you have, if you have a family of 9 kids, it's going to might look a little bit different. You may put a little bit more weight on the homeschooling thing versus just somebody that's just a couple that are single. So So yeah, so I would say definitely permitting, land use, restrictions, zoning would be one of the primary things right off the bat. And then I would definitely put that climate that we're emphasizing earlier way, I don't want to say at the bottom, but I wouldn't emphasize it as much as people do. And then really from there, yeah, the right to, yeah, I would say the right to bear arms. So Second Amendment, I don't want to get political, but I would definitely say a little bit more on the conservative side of things. So in like conservative states. So just to name a few, there's Tennessee, there's Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, those are some of the highlighted ones, I guess, if you will, some of the Carolinas as well. There's tons, there's probably tons up north that I'm not too familiar with.
Because generally those states are going to have more of the freedoms.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
so, and they align with our values in particular.
Correct.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I would just stay away from heavy land restrictions and zoning. That's the big one that will limit you right away. And that also comes along with, if you generally have that, you're generally gonna have more restrictions on the other side of things too, whether it's homeschooling or whatever. They kind of go hand in hand. So, but I would definitely start with land use, because that's the bread and butter of it all. And then from there, whatever else fits your criteria for your family.
Okay, I agree. And then the only thing I want to add to that as well is, for me, as much as possible, staying out of the major cities, the major metros. And that's going to be anywhere. Red state, blue state, because that's where all the policies...
To me, I thought that was automatic, basically thinking that was... I was trying to think of just land use, like being on a homestead or whatever the case is.
But not everybody that values freedom also wants to be on a homestead.
Correct.
So just even beyond that, for some people, maybe they just want to have a home in the suburbs and just be left alone. Maybe they want to have just a chicken or two.
Right. And they may not even want that, but they want the right to bear arms and have a gun case full of a garage full of guns. So,
look at what states you're in or looking into, and then also, generally speaking, being away from some of these major cities, major metros. You start out with that, and then you can start looking at the other things that you were bringing up, everything that we were talking about, and that should get you to an area where you're definitely going to have a lot more freedom.
Yeah, and it's going to vary from family to family. So whatever fits your family's criteria is what you should go for.
Yeah. So for us, we want to homestead, have land, all that stuff. For somebody else, it might just, it can look different. So.
Absolutely.
But thank you guys for watching. Let us know what your thoughts are on all of this. How do you feel about the state that you live in? Are you looking to relocate to somewhere else? Let us know down in the comment section below. And next week, we're also going to be talking about the best places to live in the United States and what to look for if you're looking for ultimate freedom.
Hope I didn't spill the beans too much, because I've already declared several. So anyways, but
I don't think you have.
Good. Well, she's got the show notes, so sounds good. Well, thank you so much, friends. We really appreciate you guys being here. Comment down below what your thoughts were. We'd love to hear from you guys. And until then, we'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Take care.